So it is on this fine day of the spooky month that I booted my ass into gear and got started on the 6th layer of this iceberg. Once again, we're only going to do the first half of the layer because these layers are ginormous with over 100 entries. The previous parts are in the description, usual disclaimer that there will be disconcerting topics discussed, so on, so forth, no one cares about the preamble. Let's just get into it. Albert Johnson. Albert Johnson, if that even is his real name, is also referred to as the Mad Trapper of Rat River. A name he got because when a few Mounties in northern Canada, where he was, went to go talk to him about setting traps up in protected areas, he responded by opening fire. Afterwards, the Mounties came back and dynamited his home, only to find that he had dug a trench in the ground, allowing him to avoid the explosion, and then they all had a big firefight. A blizzard hit after the Mounties backed off and Albert made a run for it. They kept firefighting. Eventually, Albert had been shot in the spine and he died. And while I summed it up really quickly, it wasn't a short event. This went over a long span of time. The firefights are hours long and this took place over multiple days in 1932. After he was killed, his belongings didn't necessarily help to explain his identity. The reason I say if that even is his real name is because he had no ID on him to confirm his name, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to what he was. Theories from being a hitman or assassin or even a serial killer. There's really nothing to prove anything. Apparently his DNA had been sequenced to show he had Swedish ancestry, and as recently as 2021, investigations into the familial history he's been tied to have been underway, to no results yet. Todd Geib. The smiley face killer theory is a theory pushed by Kevin Gannon, Anthony Duarte, and Dr. Lee Gilbertson, 2 retired detectives and a criminal justice professor respectively. The theory states that 45 men found dead in bodies of water across several Midwestern American states were linked, the victims of either one or multiple serial killers for various reasons, with the smiley face part coming from graffiti depicting smiley faces found around where some of the bodies were located. The reason I bring this up is that Todd Geib is a figure who most of the sources I could find linked back to a television show called Smiley Face Killers: The Hunt for Justice. This show ran for 6 episodes and was said to investigate a different potential victim of the so-called smiley face killer or killers each episode. The final episode was on Todd, who was a 22-year-old man last seen attending an orchid party in 2005, who was found 22 days later floating upright in a private lake. This was ruled an accidental drowning, the idea being that he'd gotten drunk and just kind of wandered in there. This ruling was disputed by Geib's mother, Kathy. It appeared that Todd's condition was not fitting that of a person who drowned 3 weeks ago, with, for instance, his clothing being relatively clean of the algae buildup one would expect, and a lack of insects who tend to take advantage of dead bodies for laying eggs. This image is even a recreation of how his body looked during recovery. The team on the show tested a state of pig carcasses left out in water for 3 weeks and found the condition way closer to what was expected than with Geib. Now, this show obviously was made for television, and I like there's some agenda to the conclusion of yes or no on the whole killer thing it wants to push, so I don't know the complete veracity of the claims being made. I also can't find anything on the case beyond this show and people talking about the show, but assuming it's all true, this would make for a very mysterious death that has gone under-investigated. I haven't found anything to say the case has been reopened. Yuba County 5. This refers to a group of 5 men who disappeared one day, last seen at a college basketball game, of which 4 were later found deceased and 1 was never found. Reportedly, the 4 who were found dead each suffered from learning disabilities, while the 5th one was seeing treatment for paranoid schizophrenia. One of the men's car, whom they were all in, was found abandoned just beyond the snow line in the Plumas National Forest. After that, the 4 found bodies were discovered. Since then, the circumstances of their death have not been discovered and the whole case remains unsolved. Peter Bergman. Peter Bergman is the pseudonym used by a yet unidentified man who checked into a hotel in County Sligo, Ireland on June 12, 2009. He was seen on CCTV cameras carrying a purple plastic bag multiple times, leaving with it and each time returning without it. It was theorized that he was disposing of his belongings and had managed to work his way around the cameras to avoid having what he was throwing out be caught. He checked out on the 15th of June and was found dead on the 16th of June lying on a beach in the morning. A post-mortem determined that he was suffering from multiple advanced stages of cancer and tumours, and also heart disease. With no identification on him to confirm his real name, and the information given to the hotel being clearly fake when analysed, we don't know who he is, where he's from, nobody's come forth as related to him, nobody stepped forth claiming they knew him, he remains unknown. The Sun's Secret Safe. The title goes kind of hard until you realize it's just referring to the British newspaper. This is a lost media thing relating to the newspaper The Sun, and the lost media thing doesn't make this fun as lost media can often be. Rather, this refers to something that was brought up during the trial Various Claimants vs. News Group Newspapers Limited, a trial that began in October of 2014 in relation to 6 senior staff members of the aforementioned tabloid, accused of misuse of private information, breach of confidence, illegal voicemail interception, blagging of private information from third parties, and use of private investigators and other unlawful means to extract private information, to quote the court record on it. There's a lot to this case, but the specific part relevant to this is that claims were made of a 7-foot tall safe that contained 30 years worth of unpublished stories, containing confidential and private information. What this is, we don't know exactly, but it could range from all sorts of things, though due to this being a tabloid wouldn't necessarily be fun to read about. And being 30 years old at the time of this case, this would include information dating back to the 1980s. Disturbing Google Maps locations. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Google Maps shows a lot of places and some of those can be disturbing. There's a ton of videos out there for exploring these. I'm just putting like a few on screen right now. I don't think I need to explore this one much. Deorr Kunz Jr. This refers to a 2-year-old boy from Idaho Falls who disappeared in July of 2015. His family was on a spontaneous camping fishing trip when at 2:40 PM they noticed Deorr had disappeared. I heard multiple ways to pronounce that in my research, so I'm just gonna go with Deorr. And probably gonna fail at keeping that consistent, I'm sorry. The various family members believe others were looking for him and he vanished. The case remains open as of today, and as simple as it would be to just end with 2-year-old boy goes missing on camping trip, there is unfortunately a little more to it than that. You see, in 2016, the boy's parents were named suspects due to inconsistencies in their statements and failed polygraph tests. Philip Klein, head of a private investigation firm that the family had hired, reported that he had evidence that ruled out the possibility of animal attack or kidnapping. Deorr's parents were also eventually evicted from their shared apartment, and within that apartment, their son's missing clothes and toys that were alleged to be at the campsite were found. This hasn't led to any charges or arrests as of yet, but it has led to many theories and beliefs from all sorts, be it randos on the internet or the people actively in the investigation, that the parents are people of interest, suspects of the case, and perhaps the boy may never have been at the campsite at all. Of course, there are questions, like why would they bring extra people on the camp trip instead of just going themselves, or why they'd hire a private dick to incriminate themselves, and just to keep myself safe, I'm not making any direct claims in this video, I'm just saying that's what many people have been led to by the evidence, and I'm not saying they're wrong. The Stern Caller Serial Killer. So the Storyville Slayer refers to an American serial killer or killers who killed 12 prostitutes between 1991 to 1996. In 1997, August 13th, the Howard Stern Show received a call from a man referring to himself as Clay, who confessed to 12 murders. But the validity of this call has been called into question, whether or not this was an actual call or a fabrication to boost ratings, whether the person in the call was even connected to the case or just some bozo. It's a bit unclear. One suspect, Russell Elwood, was charged for some of the murders, though there remain other suspects and the potential possibility that multiple killers were involved overall. And you'll notice, Russell's name isn't Clay. Leoon. Leoon refers to an urban legend in Switzerland of a ghostly figure who roams around the village of Mols, particularly in the forest. A tall humanoid dressed in a boiler suit with a gas mask, he's been sighted from as early as the late 1990s, and then one day in 2013, bam, this image was released, the first known photograph of him. And then he was never sighted again. Instead, the cloak and mask was supposedly found lying around with a note claiming to be from the man himself, displeased with the photograph's circulation and not wanting to draw attention to the forest. It's believed this guy either just continued his walks without the costume after, or may have ended his own life. Either way, this is a thing that very well could have existed and was just some guy walking around in a funny outfit. Physics-defying Antarctic particles. I've had my eye on this title ever since starting this part. What the fuck is a physics-defying Antarctic particle? Well, I cannot reach the site linked in the Iceberg, so I'm going to have to assume it's this particular case where in Antarctica, instruments detected 2 unexplainable radio pulses below the ice that physics suggests should have been absorbed into the rock and remain undetectable. But they came out anyway. We don't know how or why, they just detected this and they ruled out noise or neutrinos in the detection. There's not enough data for a conclusion right now, but I am interested in the physics-defying Antarctic particles. Burrowing burglars. So in the mid-1980s, multiple thieves broke into 2 LA region banks by digging. They dug around and used all-terrain vehicles to move from place to place. They managed to get away with at least $270,000. Have never been found. There were a lot of other details, but it all just kind of boiled down to the same few points. The gang of guys dug their way through the 3 banks, only robbed 2, made off with a lot of money. Whether or not it was worth all that labor though is a different matter. Peaches. I was really hoping that peaches would be a funny one. You know, like what if this was, like there was one species of peaches that could smile? Wouldn't that be silly? Instead, this refers to a woman known by the nickname, but actually named Tanya Denise Jackson, whose torso was discovered in 1997, and believed to be connected to the Long Island serial killings. She was known as Peaches for years until April 23, 2025 due to her peach tattoo. Not only was she eventually identified, but her daughter Titania's skeleton's remains were also found in 2011. The 2 were estranged from their families and never reported missing. This is also potentially connected to the next entry, Cherries. Cherries is a still unidentified dismembered torso found in 2007, similarly named for a tattoo on her body, this time of course of cherries. There's not much more to say honestly, 3 people who had been killed and dismembered, and as of now, 1 remains identified. Thylacine. The thylacine, known colloquially though falsely as the Tasmanian tiger, is a now extinct marsupial predator native to Australia and New Guinea. It is an icon of our culture, a gorgeous creature and one of our most prominent terrestrial predators while it was around. The thylacine would last be seen in 1936 as the final known member of its species that died in Hobart Zoo. It was rendered extinct from hunting, competition with the newly introduced dingoes, and human encroachment on its territory, among even more factors. Since its extinction, many have had supposed sightings of the thylacine, though none have been confirmed. It's technically within the realm of possibility that they are still out there, but it is very unlikely. It remains an icon of our country, featured on the Tasmanian coat of arms and even identified as the constellation Wurawana Corina, based on an Aboriginal Australian story of a thylacine pup that saved a boy from an attack by a big-ass kangaroo, the stripes on their back being marks of bravery given to them by the boy. With the genome having been fully sequenced, there have been attempts to bring it back through cloning, though whether this will be successful will have to be seen later. Japan's missing centenarians. Sogen Kato was believed to be Japan's oldest man at 111 years old, until July of 2010, where his mummified corpse was found still in his bed where he had died 30 years prior. Why the hell was he believed to be the oldest? As it turns out, one member of his family was responsible for fraud, having claimed 9.5 million yen in pension money meant for the man himself. This led to a study and search for centenarians that were missing due to poor record keeping, with 234,254 people registered as older than 100, one even up to 186 years old, who just maybe not alive anymore. This is also sparked further when the oldest living woman in Japan, Fusa Furaya, was not found. Rather, the daughter she was supposedly living with said that she hadn't seen her in 25 years. Who knows how many centenarians in Japan may have died decades ago. The first murder. So in northern Spain, a cave was found to have 28 people's remains in it. The damage in them suggests that at least one of the skulls found in the cave was victim of a murder, meaning someone committed a brutal murder a solid 430,000 years ago, the oldest known murder. João Maria de Souza refers to a Brazilian man of that name who died one day. He was sleeping in his bed with his wife when a fucking cow fell through the roof and crushed him. He didn't actually die in that moment though, rather he was taken to a hospital and treated for hours, where sadly he would pass away. The hospital has actually been accused of providing insufficient treatment, though of course they deny it. The cow's owner has not been identified from what I've been able to find, but they may be held accountable for allowing the cow to escape and climb its way to the upper floor of a fucking house. The Great Buenos Aires Bank Heist. In 2006, a television broadcast would show a major bank heist in Buenos Aires. Police had the area surrounded. They had contacted one of the men inside named Walter and learned that they had 23 hostages. It was apparently oddly cheerful in there. Eventually, Walter went silent and they couldn't contact him anymore. As it turned out, the robbers had cleared out the deposit boxes of the most affluent people in the city and disappeared. The 2 exits of the bank were both covered and the robbers weren't found to be hiding among the hostages. They were gone. As it turns out, they were led by Fernando Araujo, and he had planned, along with about 6 other guys, a fake robbery. That's right, the whole hostage situation and standoff with the police was a fake robbery that acted as a diversion, creating a fake stalemate that kept the authorities busy, while the rest of the crew used mathematics to carve out an underground tunnel exactly where they needed it. They broke in while the police were focused on the hostage situation, emptied out a ton of these heavily fortified boxes, and escaped. Hilariously, the police thought they were tricking the robbers by airing the live broadcast with a 30-minute delay, so that way their upcoming raid would happen 30 minutes before it aired. That didn't work, but the men were all captured and identified, or at least most of them were. But that was then, and it seems now most of them are free and almost pseudo-celebrities. That's kind of funny. The Vicanti mouse. This is a 1996 mouse with an ear growing out of it, except it's not. Rather, they seeded cells from a cow's knee into an ear-shaped mold which was then implanted into the mouse. That's all it is. The mouse is probably killed. Sorry, Kill Kisser. Ota Benga. Oh, fuck. Okay. Ota Benga was a Umbuti man who was, featured in a human zoo in the monkey house and alongside an orangutan. He was given a bow and arrows and shot a few people who mocked him, which did good. They deserved it. He would eventually be released, but the story doesn't necessarily get better, because he was given a formal education and altered to fit in society better, but when he found out that World War I prevented him from being able to return home to Africa, he shot himself in the heart. He was then buried in an unmarked grave, and his remains went missing later than that. Wenceslao Moguel. This man, who, again, I unfortunately believe I've mispronounced the name of, was a prisoner of war sentenced to death. Accused of being a rebel during the Mexican Revolution, he was sent off to get shot to death by firing squad. He survived roughly 9 shots to the body and a final shot to the head. There are multiple stories as of how he survived, but in the end it's known that he did and lived another 60 odd years afterwards, passing away at the ripe old age of 79 despite being permanently disfigured from the wound. He was given the name El Fusilado, or the Shot One. Joseph Samuel. This is another case of a guy who survived intended execution, convicted in 1795 and sent to Australia, and then convicted again for robbery in 1803. Sentenced to hang, they failed to, do that. First the rope snapped, then it unraveled, the next one snapped again. Now consider this is 1803, you'd not be surprised he was given a pardon due to divine intervention. Unfortunately, he did not get to live another 60 years. Instead, he would be declared drowned 3 years later when he tried to escape the settlement he lived in via boat with several other convicts. He was only in his 20s. Mr. Sleepy People. This was a weird ass YouTube channel where the creator would go up to sleeping women and do all sorts of weird stuff to them. The channel is gone now due to a video from Nick Crowley, and to be honest, most of the information I am getting from that video because every other source leads to that video. This shit makes me uncomfortable. I'm used to all kind of fucked shit at this point, but I think eyeball stuff has gone in with fingernail shit as a stuff where I say, no thank you. So he would go up to women who are unconscious, likely drugged or drunk, and his sneakiness and the amount of touching have led Nick and frankly myself to conclude this was real and non-consensual, which makes it significantly worse, and he would touch and lick and play with their eyes and stuff. I don't want to talk about it much longer. Yeah, just go watch the video. I'll link it in the description, unless I forgot, in which case please remind me, Mr. Biffweed. Engraved Hourglass Nebula. It's a nebula that looks like this. It's really colorful. It's a result of different shells of elements being blasted off all around. We don't know the central star. It looks cool, doesn't it? Hitogata. Hitogata is the name given to a supposed lost Japanese commercial mentioned in the anonymous Japanese text board 2chan. It was claimed by the original poster to feature 2 white men on a black background, each one flashing in and out of existence in an alternating pattern, while a droning sound played in the back, with the text "every 2 seconds a man dies on Earth" showing. I have taken upon myself to replicate what I believe this would have looked like.
지구에서는 2초마다 한 명의 사람이 죽는다.
Or you could just use any of these other mock-ups of how it could have looked for a more authentic one. However, there isn't much proof that it actually existed as of now. It could just be someone making shit up and then other people's brains tricking them into thinking they've seen it when it might have just been something similar. That's not to say it doesn't exist though. The fact that I am an English speaker and this is an entirely Japanese subject means I am limited to only sources that have translated what's been said, and they themselves are limited by often not being actually Japanese. You know, like me, I know what sources generally I can use to get an idea of what I'm looking at, but that's usually for things that are English things in English. That's not as easy with Japanese. Euthanasia Coaster. What a fucking insane name. Also an insane concept, because the idea for this is that it's a hypothetical roller coaster designed to kill its passengers by dragging them down a 500-meter slope and then into multiple back-to-back loops so fast the G-forces flat out kill your ass. This is a hypothetical and doesn't exist outside of this small model of it. By the way, this is how big Godzilla Earth and the Empire State Building would look next to this thing. Being a nice round of 500, I believe we from now on should use euthanasia coasters as a measurement of distance. For instance, the moon is a distance of 768,800 euthanasia coasters away from Earth. Mr. Fritz the Dummy. Mr. Fritz is this incredibly creepy ventriloquist doll head that is supposedly haunted, locked away in a glass case in Michael Diamond's private collection of stuff he finds interesting. It was created by a Private Billy Booth, a former puppeteer now turned prisoner of war who wanted to entertain himself and others with his talents. Billy would not make it out of the prison camp, having been shot and killed before the camp was liberated. Mr. Fritz would be sent to Billy's family after the liberation, and from there be passed around between collectors for some time. Diamond would eventually come to be his owner, and the person who gave it to him claimed to have noticed creepy happenings, like Mr. Fritz's display case being open overnight, despite him making sure it was closed, as well as the head's eyes and mouth sometimes being in different positions without him moving it. Diamond would also notice similar occurrences in his own display room. He also recorded the footage you've been watching. Of course, all the information here is from Michael Diamond himself, so how much is real is up for debate. It does have some degree of trust me bro energy to it, but the footage, real or fake, is really damn creepy, and if it is fake, it's very well done. My question is, if this is real, why would we need to be scared of Mr. Fritz? Was this not a dummy made to cheer people up and be fun? I feel like if anything, it's friendly. Just because it's haunted doesn't mean it has to be evil. What if it's trying to get out because it wants to make people happy and it can't do that when it's stuck in a box? The Belmez faces. The faces of Belmez refer to a supposed phenomenon in a singular private house in Spain beginning from 1971, where stains on the wall would develop over time into the shape of a face. The faces would appear and disappear and back again over time, photographed and claimed to not be made by people. There's obviously two camps on this. Camp A says it's a hoax perpetrated for financial gain due to the incentive of seeing a real-ass spooky location, quote unquote, with suspicion cast on the fact that the faces would not change when the original person to find them, Maria Gomez Camara, wasn't around, and that they now persist due to the Pereira family who lives there. Camp B says it's real and a result of thoughtography, either from Maria or ghosts of some kind. All my casual Psyche K enjoyer goats out there know that thoughtography is when you imagine something really hard and it becomes an image. Which, if you think about it, it's kind of like drawing, but you don't have a hand. But the last forensic analysis was in 2014, and there's no conclusion as to how these faces came to be, so who knows what's going on. The Exceed 4000. The Exceed 4000 is a hypothetical 4km tall and 6km wide, or 8 Euthanasia Coasters tall and 12 Euthanasia Coasters wide, megastructure skyscraper designed for Tokyo in 1995. It was made to earn recognition for the Taisei Corporation that conceived it, not actually be built. Fun fact, it is designed to the image of Mount Fuji, but is bigger than it. It is also so big it would require environmental controls to ensure the people within it don't die. Ferdinand Cheval. So this man was a mail carrier who constructed the Le Palais Ideal, or the Ideal Palace. It took him 33 years and he started when he was 43 years old. This is a gorgeous 10-meter tall stone-made structure resembling royal pavilions that acts as a temple of nature in the words of Cheval himself. Many different styles are featured, it is wonderful. He wanted to be buried there, but the authorities didn't allow it, so he spent 8 more years building himself a mausoleum and died 1 year after he finished that. And this time, he was allowed to be buried there. David Grunman. David Grunman shot a cactus with a shotgun and then it fell on him and crushed him to death. That's all there is to it. Guy shot a giant 8-meter tall saguaro cactus out in Arizona, which then clapped back. Don't go shooting cacti, guys. David Louis Sneddon. David was a 24-year-old American uni student who disappeared when traveling through the Tiger Leaping Gorge alone in China. Officially, he was considered to have died by falling into the Jinsha River, though no body was ever found. Now, some believe, according to South Korean intelligence, that he was kidnapped by North Korea and used to become the personal language tutor of English to Kim Jong-un, now living there by the name of Jung Bong-soo. So, those are the two possibilities as to what happened to him. Joanna Lopez. This refers to a 1989 broadcast on WMHQ, where after the sign-off and anthem, this image dropped on screen with no sound. This image allegedly remained on screen for hours until the next day. It's also reported that there was a broadcast in 1991, though I've seen people arguing back and forth as to if that's legitimate due to the logo being used, which is the exact same as the 1989 one. The image clearly shows nothing clearly. A missing person presumed to be a woman named Joanna Lopez, and that's it. Internet sleuths have been active on this one for a long time and uncovered something shocking. Fuck all. The usual sources for missing people don't come up with the name, the number shown was once used for the Chicago Police Youth Division, which is something, but not much. There's very little information. She's been attached to a certain Jane Doe on the Doe network. There's claims this was all a hoax or even part of an ARG and didn't actually broadcast. A lot of questions going on. And of course, the image is quite spoopy because it's lower quality content than my channel. But there is basically no conclusive information on this one. It's been in circulation for some time. Timothy Dexter. The self-named Lord Timothy Dexter was an eccentric 1700s businessman who got incredibly lucky and stumbled into wealth despite being illiterate, which made his book really funny. He was jokingly or mockingly told to make terrible business decisions that turned out to work, such as shipping coal to Newcastle, which he happened to do during the miners' strike, which got him shitloads of money. He was a weird guy, but he made a living for himself. Kind of fell out with his family though, but you win some, you lose some. Chandre Oram. Chandre is an Indian man in West Bengal who is the proud owner of a 33cm long tail. This is gaining followers as an incarnation of Hanuman. However, it seems he doesn't have a real tail, but a spina bifida, meaning that his spine is split and it comes out of his lumbar region, instead of the coccyx where a real tail would come from, which is possible for a human to be born with, though it's super unlikely. He spent some time looking for a wife, wanting one who could accept his tail, and then he got one. But reportedly she kinda hates it and only married him because her brothers wanted her to get married, so yeah. Jules Shipping. Jewel is a woman who tragically got blinded with drain cleaner. And by tragically got blinded, I mean she purposely organized for a psychologist to pour drain cleaner into her eyes to render herself blind. She suffers from body integrity identity disorder, which results in people believing they are supposed to be disabled in ways that they aren't. In her case, she grew up wanting to be blind, and now she is. Dr. Martin Cooney. Martin was a fraudulent doctor originally named Michael Cohen, and yet despite being a fraud who was not a real doctor, he succeeded in saving thousands of premature babies with his unorthodox approach, including sticking them in incubator tubes and making people pay to see them battle for life or death. Which, it's kind of fucked up, but you gotta do what you gotta do for the funding to save more lives, I guess. He lived to the age of 80 and claimed a very high success rate of helping premature babies, and it definitely says something about the medical industry at the time that they would give up on these babies immediately while some glorified bum from across the land could save them. The 52 Hz whale, also known as 52 Blue, this is an individual whale of unknown species identified for its unusually high 52 Hz frequency call, higher than any known species of whale. Since the late 1980s, it has been heard all coming from a single one, aside from one possible second recording of a similar sound in 2010, which was heard a few more times. Since 1992, the Hertz has dipped to 50, suggesting maturation, and while similar to a blue whale's, the migration and movement of the whale is uniquely its own. The whale has never been sighted or identified, and is sometimes considered to be a mutated blue whale of some kind, and some have suggested even maybe a deaf whale. Listen to this. This is the sound of Hoover, a harbour seal who can imitate human speech to a limited degree. Once a tiny pup whose mother was found dead, he was taken in by a family and raised as essentially a big water dog, which, given pinnipeds are part of Carniformia, isn't necessarily a shocker. Eventually he began to imitate his owner's voice, and when moved over to the New England Aquarium, who could better care for him, would eventually start uttering phrases like, "Hello there," which made him very popular. Because not only was he amazingly able to speak, he was also highly cultured. He had 6 children and eventually died in 1985 of complications connected to his annual molt. Yeah, Beavis won. This is a lost game mentioned in the June 1989 listing of mail-order video games in an issue of Video Games and Computer Entertainment, which might not even exist. Mentioned in the same context across the next few months, that was it. The game is notable for both not existing maybe, and also for being wrongfully placed in alphabetical order above Xenophobe, despite the fact that we all know that Y comes after X. It's hypothesized that this could have been a copyright trap, a game made up by the magazine so that anyone copying their list would be proven guilty by virtue of having the exact same made up game in the exact same place. It also could have been a placeholder for another game, even a mistranslation, or a joke or an unofficial or unlicensed game that's lost forever. Some have theorized it may even be a cancelled sequel to Super Pitfall 2, but copyright trap may be the strongest theory. U/Iceman Throwaway 123. This refers to a user who posted about 12 identical convenience stores popping up in their location. They each sold the same products, expired food, and had workers that stared at people who walked in. This is obviously really shady, and a lot of people went in assuming this was a money laundering scheme, the mafia, human trafficking, drugs, maybe bullshit. Speaking honestly here, first of all, if it was anything shady like that, why did they decide to do the most suspicious thing possible, dropping 12 stores that do nothing but sell expired shit? That's a great way to attract attention. But also, I just think 12 identical stores is so absurd. How did they just pop up? Did they airdrop them? Did the battle bus come in? Iceman Throwaway then went on to disappear 6 years ago, which given the Throwaway and the account name is no surprise. The Land Before Time original. I love The Land Before Time, a childhood classic to me. Maybe I should rank all the movies in the series. I hit the mic. But as it turns out, there was an original, uncut version of the film, now likely lost to time, that featured extended sequences and more violence. What a shame, I love violence. Most if not all of the cuts centered around the villain Sharptooth, which is no surprise. That said, a lot of the images shown look like what I remember seeing in the VHS copy of the movie I have, which makes me wonder if this is really lost stuff or not. The Chinchilla Bus Kidnapping. This is a 1976 event where 3 men hijacked a school bus with 26 children and its driver, then stuffed them into a trailer. They all escaped with no harm before any ransom demands could be made, which is a great ending, though a lot of the children unsurprisingly suffered from PTSD after this. The kidnappers were then arrested, all of which spent between 30 and 40 years in jail before being paroled, at the ages of 57 to 70. Mount Asahidake SOS Incident. In 1989, a giant-ass SOS was spotted on Mount Asahi, Japan, along with 2 lost mountaineers who were rescued. That would make a nice simple story, but as it turns out, the 2 mountaineers weren't the ones who made it. They had no idea it was there. When authorities went back, they found the remains of 1 person, as well as a hole filled with various items, including a driver's license for a missing man by the name of Kenji Iwamura, who as of today has been missing for 41 years. How is he missing if they found human remains? Well, those remains turned out to belong to a woman, though later they were re-examined and found to belong to a man. And in the hole included cassette tapes that recorded a young man shouting for 2 minutes. The hole also included tapes that had music from Macross and Minky Momo, because we needed more reasons to consider Minky Momo cursed. And if all that wasn't enough, we have no idea who actually made the sign, which had been there for years prior to all of this. Just a giant set of logs and a massive SOS that nobody knows the origins of. Leaving us with two mysteries: what happened to Iwamura and the other guy in the tape, and what the fuck made that sign? Thomas Messick. Thomas Messick went missing in 2015 at the age of 83, last seen hunting with a party in HorrorCon, New York. At the age of 83, it's not unreasonable that he may have simply died in the woods, though the lack of any body or remains is incredibly suspicious. The FBI allegedly got called in and couldn't find any indication of foul play. Another possibility is that he was kidnapped, though again, no indication of foul play, so we really don't know anything. Martin family. In December of 1958, the Martin family disappeared in Oregon during a trip made to gather Christmas decorations. After their disappearance, the bodies of two of them, Susan and Virginia, were found on the shores of the Columbia River. The other three members, however, Kenneth, Barbara, and Barbie, have not been found and their condition is unknown. In 2024, their vehicle was found at the Columbia River, and in 2025, the remains of several people were announced to have been pulled from the car alongside a camera case with Kenneth's name. That said, this was late August of 2025, and as of this video, that's this year, only a few months ago. So while there's no more information I could find, that could change before this video even drops. So hopefully this is a mystery that will be solved soon. Keith Parkins. Keith Parkins was a 2.5-year-old boy who went missing for 19 hours in the Blue Mountains. He was found lying face down in the snow 9 miles from his grandparents' house, and he was alive. Why exactly he went missing is still something of a mystery, but at the end of the day, I think I speak for all of us when I say the fact that he was found and made a full recovery is the most important thing. Peg Kilcoyne. Dr. Margaret Mary Kilcoyne, another name that I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, let me know, disappeared in January of 1980 from Nantucket, with as of now no explanation, no answers, nothing. And it seems even the people who were there are not able to agree on what even happened leading up to the disappearance. A month after, her belongings were found in the Phillips Run swamp area, which prompted a second large-scale search, and also led to having to consider multiple other possibilities as to what happened. At first, it was brought up the possibility that she had taken her own life in the midst of a mental breakdown, but now it seemed other possibilities had to be considered, as how would she have left her belongings there nowhere near her body, which was never found? A tape recording was also found the day of her disappearance that contained audio of Margaret and her brother talking, with her claiming the two of them were being spiritually tested and that she had received a message from his late wife, though apparently this was normal behaviour for her. Today she's still gone missing, there's no body, there's no explanation for how her belongings got there, no theory stronger than others. Servant Girl Annihilator. The Servant Girl Annihilator, also known as the Midnight Assassin, was a serial killer in Texas who operated between 1884 and 1885. A series of 8 axe murders were reported as being committed by an insane serial killer, who as of this day is not known. Funnily enough, it has been suggested that this man is actually the same as Jack the Ripper, with the theory originating in 1888, but we don't know the person still. The show History Detectives though determined it could have been a 19-year-old man by the name of Nathan Elgin, but I've not seen this show and I don't know how supportive this is. I will say though, Servant Girl Annihilator is a really silly but much cooler name than Jack the Ripper. Celebrity number 6. Celebrity number 6 was the name given to a woman spotted on a set of curtains. When posted, the user asked if people could identify all the people present. The 6th was not identified, which is where I could go into more details, but 4 years later, people found that it was Leticia Sandra, a Spanish model. It's solved. Kirkendall phone stalker. In 2007, 3 families claimed they were being called repeatedly by someone at all hours of the night, threatening to kill their children and more. Voicemails playing recordings of their private conversations were also sent. The families believed their phones were being used to spy on them. The police were less than convinced, and the IT guy said it was okay. It's also suggested that a member of the family, Courtney, may have been the one doing it, though there was a span where her phone was taken from her, and the call still came in. Oddly enough, I didn't find much information on this one. There is more stuff than this, but it boils down to this summary. We don't know if it was real or not, or who did it if it was. David Glenn Lewis. David Glenn Lewis was a man who went missing in 1993 after leaving work around midday due to feeling unwell. He was never seen again. Until 2004, where he was pronounced dead. Why? Because a formerly unidentified John Doe who was killed just a few days after his disappearance turned out to be Lewis. He was struck by a car in Washington and wasn't able to be identified for 11 years. This would normally be where it ends, but there are 2 unanswered questions here. Because while he was struck in Washington, he lived in Texas. That's quite a far distance to make without any direct flight, so while we know what happened to him in terms of the end, we don't know how he got to Washington to be struck by that car, nor do we know why he was there. Endlings. This one's particularly sad to me. Endlings refers to the last identified individuals of any particular species or subspecies. I already showed you the Thylacine endling earlier, but I'd say the most well-known endling aside from that would be Lonesome George, the last known member of the Pinta Island tortoise, who today, even a decade after his death, stands as a symbol for conservation efforts around the globe. There's also Martha, the last passenger pigeon, who died in 1914, Celia, the last Piranian ibex, who died in 2000, and Fernanda, who is still alive today as the last known Fernandina Island Galapagos tortoise. A harrowing reminder of the impact humans can have on the world. Robot Wars, the third accidents. So you know Robot Wars, the British show about robots fighting? Well, the third Wars was the third series, and while super successful, it was full of controversy and behind the scenes trouble. Suboptimal organization and safety standards, and even a production member getting injured by a saw, a technician being stabbed with spikes, an assistant director being hit by a machine and falling on a spike. Lots of issues that led to massive changes in the show's history that hopefully has made it much safer and less fucked all around. The SL-1 nuclear meltdown. The stationary low-power reactor number 1 was an experimental nuclear reactor that ran for 3 years until it exploded, to this day remaining the only US nuclear reactor accident to result in immediate death. When a control rod was withdrawn on June 3rd of 1961, the reactor began to go critical and heat up, expanding the water inside the core until, well, you know, it did what you'd expect and killed the 3 operators. The cause of this meltdown is where the mystery seems to be. Why did the rod need to be moved? Why was it pulled out so far? Theories involve sabotage, intentional attempt to kill everyone, or an accident. Nobody was there to see it, nobody's there to supervise, so we may not ever know exactly what happened. Errata. The Butcher. The Butcher is a lost Nickelodeon puppet short film from the early 2000s, about a puppet made out of actual animal bones. Its existence, however, is unconfirmed, with the original poster claiming it to have been a movie with no dialogue, featuring multiple animal bone puppets, a pair of hands with a knife, and mostly consisting of animals being chopped into bits, shit like that. The poster believes he's remembering the film Butcher's Hook, but otherwise it's not confirmed. Cursed Kleenex commercial. The Cursed Kleenex commercial is this commercial here that's a bit creepy. The commercial was accused of being cursed, with the cameraman dying in a sauna, the actress losing her mind and offing herself, and the child dying of death. And if you watch this commercial, you will die. That's the belief, but yeah, it's probably fake. ASASSNV J213939.3-702817.4. This is a star with an unusual dimming period. That is to say, its apparent magnitude, or how bright it looks, dropped for no reason. That's what it is. ASASSN-15LH. This is an omega-ass bright event that looked like a super luminous supernova. At its peak, it was brighter than the entire Milky Way galaxy 20 times over. We don't know exactly what it was, but speculation includes a tidal event around a supermassive black hole, a quark-nova, just a really fucking bright supernova, and more terms that I don't understand. IPTH14HLS. Ah, this I can understand. This was a supernova. You ever seen a supernova? Well, this one was erupting continuously for 1,000 days beginning in 2014, until it turned into a remnant nova. It also erupted before in 1954, so it was several eruptions actually. And so far, no hypothesis can fully explain the phenomenon. But if I may, I noticed that 1954 and 2014 are both incredibly important years for Godzilla, so I speculate this supernova occurred both at the birth of Godzilla and the revival of Godzilla. And should Godzilla miraculously undergo another decade of silence, he will return with a new movie at the end of it, and this supernova will erupt again. SDSS J1240 plus 6710. Nicknamed Dox, this refers to a white dwarf star in the constellation Draco. It is a little unusual in that it has an atmosphere of pure oxygen around it, well, not pure oxygen, there's other things, but like mostly pure oxygen, 99%, with a mass that's not high enough for what would be needed to convert carbon into oxygen, neon, and magnesium. It was then found to be one of multiple stars moving at unusually high speeds, and we know nothing more about why it's doing what it's doing. SCP-06F6. This was a real-ass SCP. That is an anomaly we don't understand. An unknown transient object spotted with the Hubble telescope in the constellation Bootes. Don't tell me it's pronounced differently, I think that's funny because I have the mind of an infant. The Boote SCP had a light spectrum that didn't match any supernovae. It was unique among astronomical phenomena, and due to this unusual spectrum, its location couldn't be determined using the usual redshifting techniques. It might have been inside or outside of the Milky Way galaxy, but there is no star or external galaxy detected at its location. It was also one of the brightest events we've ever recorded. It is genuinely a real-ass SCP. RZ Piscium. Piscium? We end on another space thing. a star 608 light years away from us in the Pisces constellation. That's my constellation, for my white half at least. The star dims and brightens erratically, blasting infrared radiation out all the while. It has been stated by astronomers that we're likely looking at a star that destroys planets instead of building them, and that the aftermath of that is probably what's detected and making the erratic luminosity. And that will be that. Feels like this is a bit of a short one, though I may just be saying that because I don't remember how long the other scripts were. I hope you enjoyed. I wanted to get this out for October because it's the spooky month, and I thought, hey, I also want to get this iceberg finished someday. It'd be a nice treat to find myself some time to do it. So let me know what you think. I'll be seeing you later. As it turns out, I was correct. This was a shorter one. I think part of that is because some of these, like getting down here, I couldn't find many sources, and the sources I could find all kind of just always said the same thing. Not to mention the, string of just astrological phenomena at the end. I don't know. Because, there's more ways to explain those, but it's using terms that I don't think a layman would get, so I could just rattle off nonsense to you and hope you understand it. But I think there's plenty of people who would just rather the cliff notes that they can get. But hey, I'm not complaining about a shorter video. I've got a massive, massive, massive ranking coming out, hopefully at the end of the year, as well as another rather large ranking you might be able to predict coming at the end of this month. So yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed this. It's another entry with bang through. We've got 3 more parts of this iceberg to do. Finish this layer, then do the last one. And honestly, if the last layer ends up having a first half that's only 40-30 minutes, I might just do it all in one video. We'll see. And then there will be a super cut of everything banged together in one big infinity hour video. But for now, thank you for watching. Hoping you're enjoying the output for the spooky month. And thank you to everyone scrolling by for supporting me on Patreon. And yeah, let's get to that. Let's see, what zingers have you guys got for me for this goddamn iceberg video? Let's see what comic geniuses are in chat. What if it's not an iceberg video next? I don't know if this is going to be the direct next upload after the Slender Man video, actually. It might not be that immediate. Well, the cat looks like it wants to kill you, so 10? Now, okay. Gumshoe is an idiot, but I want to give him credit. In the original trilogy, he was a lot more thoughtful than this, at least to this extent. Usually. Not all the time, though. Who thumbed this up? That's all I want to know. Scientists find evidence of ghost population of ancient humans. So close. That is a skeleton. There are 2 wolves inside of you. Number 15, Burger King foot lettuce. The last thing you want in your Burger King burger is someone else's foot fungus. This is how Chills often talks, going up and down with this strange monotone. It's really hard to explain. I wonder if he is a more or less boring narrator than Jeremy from Cinema Sins. Randomly pick another pin quote from our DMs to read. Okay. RNG 1 to 50. Go. 46. 46? That's gonna be right near the end. That's how numbers work, kids. Mud on the Barbie, my favorite. Hey, that's a Soul Dude reference. That's a reference to my guy Soul. I said right at the end. It's technically gonna be one of the first because of the way I'm counting it. One of the earliest ones to get it. Mud on the Barbie, my favorite. I hope you enjoyed Soul. Biff, you should have said this for the Slender Man video. He's actually gonna watch that one. Well, yeah, okay. Subscribe to Soul Symbiote, people. Anyway, that was that. I don't know what I was expecting. Have a good one, folks. See you next time.